Hey, everybody. Welcome to Daniel Davis's Deep Dive, where we are looking out for you. We're giving you the information that you need to be able to make sense of the world around you in ways that you don't get in the major media. And man, is that ever going to be needed today? Because we're facing the potential for a government shutdown again. Seems like every year we come up to this, and I don't think it's just me, but I bet you're a lot like me that you're sick and tired of this. I mean, gracious, this is not hard. It's not hard. It's just that they don't want to get this right. This is supposed to be a basic performance and function of Congress. I mean, this is supposed to be below the level of anything coming up public. It's just part of their job. They can argue about all kinds of other policies and things like that, but goodness gracious. I mean, every single year we come up to this. And now this year, for a number of reasons, this one is looking very probable to go to a shutdown. Here's just a real quick clip of some of the things that some of the people are saying on the Sunday talk shows just yesterday about the looming potential shutdown.
The holdouts keep saying to Kevin McCarthy, don't bring bipartisan bills to the floor. We don't want you to use Democrat votes to try to avert a shutdown.
Our poll found that more Americans would blame Democrats for a possible shutdown than Republicans. How do you explain that?
I just don't think that's how it's going to actually play out in a Republican shutdown.
I called it a month ago, and I said we're on a path to a shutdown because Speaker McCarthy wants that and President Biden wants that. Everyone feels as if this is a political problem that they can just blame one another. Who's going to get hurt the most is the American public. So we have to come together and we have to pass appropriations bills.
And that last part that Representative Gonzalez said is what I want to focus on the most on this deep dive. There's no shortage of any places you can go today to find out, all of the nuances of why this is happening and, what the Republicans are doing, the conflict within the Republican Party, the conflict between the Republican Democratic Party, how everybody's already trying to posture to blame the other one because everybody wants to gain politically from this issue here. So I don't want to talk about that. What I do want to talk about a lot is what's a little bit beneath the surface that none of these other people are talking about, because everybody's talking about what's happening up here on the top level, but nobody's looking beneath that into the deep area to where it affects you. And believe me, this is an issue that it's going to, one way or another, it's going to affect virtually every American, and some much more than others. And somehow they never factor into this. In fact, the only time you ever seem to hear about them mentioned is when the politicians of any side wants to say, oh, only the American people are going to be hurt, but my political opponent fill in the blank. I mean, they're all saying basically the same script, is that they're trying to make you believe that the other party is to blame for this. And if only they would be reasonable. I watched a bunch of different clips of members of the Republicans on the House, the Freedom Caucus, who were kind of recalcitrant on the mainstream Republicans and on the Democratic side. And it's literally almost the same with all of them, is that they posture their positions as being very reasonable. And all I'm asking is fill in the blank about what's reasonable to them. But of course, they know it's not reasonable to the other side. And instead of anybody compromising, just doing the basic things necessary to do their job that they're getting paid for, they want to try and blame the other side for that, and they want to stick firm to this, and they don't care that the American people are the ones that are going to pay the price. And believe me, they are paying the price. So look, there's about 3.5 million federal workers spread throughout the United States, with a good portion of them here in Washington, D.C. And look, let me just plain. These are human beings. These are people with families that have bills, that are trying to figure out how to get by in their life. And this happens every year, and it's happening right now, where we're potentially a week from a shutdown. No one knows if it's going to happen for sure, or if it does, how long it lasts. The one in 2013 was, I think, 16 days. The one in 2018 during the Trump administration lasted 34 days. And you cannot imagine how disruptive that is, because the paychecks don't come in. And so people who live paycheck to paycheck, and that's a good portion of our country. Look, a lot of these government employees, they're not rich. They don't make a lot of money. Some of them can barely get the bills paid. And yet they have to do that anyway. They don't get to not pay bills because the government and the Congress can't do its job. And when you can't pay your bills, then this has cascading effects later on, because now you have to delay and pay things later on. Now, look, most of the time, in fact, I believe it's every time, Congress later on comes back and then they'll reimburse the federal workforce for the money that they lost. Now, think about how stupid that is. So Congress knows that they're going to do what they nearly always do, and later on they're going to pay the federal workforce. But all of the disruption this caused, you can't change that. And a lot of this stuff has cascading effects because you push off this bill until later. Now you get it back again, some period of time in the front, some number of paychecks, who knows when that will come. And so sometimes you have to borrow money, you have to use a credit card, and then that's got to be paid off. And then sometimes you have difficulty with the bill collectors because they want their money. Now they don't care about that either. And it just puts so much stress on people's lives. But it's even worse than that, because again, imagine this. Congress knows they're going to end up putting this money back in there. But that means however long this lasts, 34 days in the last time this happened, that our government is paying people who don't do anything for the government. All of these services, if you have passport services, the national parks, all kinds of things that all these government officials that we have, all these things that happen for the government, for that take care of some of the most needy in our country, none of them are going to be working. You want to try to get something done, something for, sometimes even, some really needed government services for people who are disabled. There's no one to answer the phone. And so sure, they're going to end up getting back paid, and who cares about the disruption that it causes in the meantime? But there's not going to be the service. So we're paying for something that doesn't happen. And here is the worst part of it all to me. They're going to negotiate and something's going to get done. It happens in 100% of the cases. There have been, I believe the number is 22 total government shutdowns in our history, going back, I want to say, from 1975 onwards. And most of them were just 1 or 2 days, and it was really kind of inconsequential. But now then they're starting to get into a little bit longer, and they cause more problems, but they still get the thing done. So that means all this posturing, it's just politics. It doesn't change anything. So all the disruption this gives to the 3.5 million Americans who have to struggle with wondering how long they're going to be without a paycheck, and all of the tens of millions of Americans who are affected negatively by the cascading effects of the workforce not being in the job, is pointless because they still pass it. So the question that no one wants to ask Congress, if you're going to make a deal after 16 days in 2013 or 34 days in 2018, why don't you do it before any of this happens? And I think the answer is because once they view that their political benefit has run its course, then they'll make a deal, which tells you conclusively that their purpose is to try to find political gain to leverage against their opponents by making the voters think that it's the other guy's fault. So they don't care about the voters. They don't care about you. They don't care about the disruption, the harm it causes to you. They only care about themselves and their political gain, and continuing to get voted into the next time and to make you not vote for their opponents the next time. That's nonsense. That's ridiculous. And I bet I'm not the only one that's getting sick of this. And look, I actually lived through the 2013 shutdown, and I was affected by it myself. I was on active duty at the time, working for a federal agency in Washington, D.C. that are an Army facility, actually, that employed a lot of civilians. And so all of our civilians went home with no pay. They weren't even allowed to come in. And in that particular year, the military got paid. So I personally didn't lose any money or any of my paychecks, but that's not always the case. But all of the complications that caused, it took us 6 months to unwind that, because there were conferences that need to happen. There were meetings that were supposed to take place. There was cooperation and coordination with other agencies and other non-governmental agencies, things that we had to do, all of which had to be postponed and then rescheduled. And we were just chasing our tail for 6 months is how long a lot of this stuff caused. So it's not just the 16 days in that situation, it caused months. Now, I can only imagine what happened in the 2018 when it was over a month of delay. And it's hard to know what's going to happen here. It could be another long one like that, because the emotions are so high and the unwillingness to compromise is so strong that this one could also drag on if they don't come up with some kind of a near-term solution. But look, we need to start being more angry, not at the other side, but at all of them. All the guys in Congress and all the women in Congress, they need to start understanding we're sick of this and we're not going to tolerate it anymore. We want you to just do your job, man. That's not complicated. It's not asking anything at all. To ask somebody who gets paid, because by the way, let's point this out, because this is one of the things that I do want to argue that there does need to be a change. When all of these people I'm talking about have to go through all this, 3.5 million Americans have potentially are going to have their salaries impacted and are not going to get their money on time. Members of Congress do. Now, why is that? Why is that? Oh, they claim that, well, it's a constitutional issue. Nothing can't be legislated, my friend. So don't believe that nonsense for a second. They don't do it because they don't want to. They want you to feel pain. They want you to feel problems, but they themselves want to insulate themselves from anything. And it's time to stop that. It's time to say, hey, you want to impact my income? Then how about yours go right along with it? I guarantee you that would way cut down on the possibilities of any future government shutdowns if the very members of Congress will be voting themselves no paycheck. Guarantee you that would vastly reduce, if not outright eliminate it, if they had to suffer the same pain that Americans do. And I think that, again, is the very least that we can expect, that they would have to go through the same thing we do, as opposed to only letting Americans suffer when these kinds of things happen. So the next time you get a chance to talk to your congressman, don't agree and clap that, yeah, the other side is at fault. I don't care who's at fault. All I care is I don't want it to happen, because I want our people and the constituents of all the districts, all Americans, to be treated with respect and to quit using us as pawns in your own political games. And that is your deep dive for today.